There's a silent rule in life. You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. The rich attract wealth because they've conditioned their thinking to receive it. The poor repel it because they've taught their minds to fear it. Change the thinking, and suddenly the whole world responds differently. Most people think poverty starts in the wallet, but it begins much earlier, in the thoughts you tolerate. The rich are not just earning more, they're thinking differently. And until you learn how to train your mind to join them, all the effort in the world will feel like pushing a rock uphill. You know, one of the greatest shifts a person can ever make in life is the shift from limitation thinking to possibility thinking. Most people walk around with a mind full of fences, telling themselves where they can't go, what they can't reach, what they can't afford, and who they can't become. The wealthy, the successful, the upward moving, they don't think like that. They stand in front of a wall, and instead of saying there's no way, they say there must be a way. And that one shift in vocabulary changes the entire path of their life. I learned early on that poverty starts long before the empty wallet. It starts in the mind, in the language we use with ourselves. I once sat with a young man who said, "I can't start a business, I don't have the money." I told him, "You don't need the money, you need the plan. The money comes after the plan." The moment he stopped asking whether he could and started asking how he could, everything changed. The mind becomes a search engine the moment you command it to find solutions. But if you ask it helpless questions, it gives you helpless answers. So the next time life hands you a challenge, don't step back into doubt, step forward into possibility. When something looks too big, don't shrink yourself, expand your imagination. I've sat at my kitchen table many nights with a problem and forced myself to write down 3 possible answers. Not the perfect answer, not the guaranteed answer, just a possible one. And it's astonishing what the mind produces when you refuse to let it off the hook. Most people let their first thought be, "I can't." And that tiny phrase decides the rest of their destiny. Replace it with something more honest. "I haven't figured it out yet." That's not denial. That's potential. That invites growth. That gives your mind permission to keep working instead of shutting down. If you want to train your mind for prosperity, start by teaching it to stay open. Staying open is a discipline. Staying imaginative is a discipline. Years ago, I was sweeping floors, broke, frustrated, and certain I didn't have any options. Then one day, a mentor handed me a book and said, "This will teach you how to think. Not what to think, how to think." And that book opened my imagination wider than my circumstances. That became a habit. Books can take your mind to places your feet haven't reached yet. So if you feel stuck, don't wait for opportunity to knock. Open a book and let possibility walk in. Train your mind to ask better questions, and your life will hand you better answers. The door to wealth opens inward first. Once the mind sees possibility, the world begins to cooperate. And if you let possibility become your default setting, you'll start unlocking doors you never even knew existed. You know, if there's one lesson that changed the entire trajectory of my life, it was realizing that my results were not accidents, not mysteries, not luck or fate. They were simply reflections of the philosophy I carried around every day. The way you think about money, time, opportunity, and responsibility becomes the blueprint for everything that happens to you. If the blueprint is weak, the building collapses. If the philosophy is small, the life becomes small. But when you elevate the philosophy, when you deepen it, strengthen it, refine it, that's when life begins to rise to meet you. I remember sitting in my little ordinary apartment years ago, wondering why some people seemed to move upward while I remained stuck. I worked hard, I showed up, I tried, but nothing changed. Then someone told me, "You don't work on your job first, you work on your philosophy." And that sentence cracked something open. Because suddenly, I had to ask myself, what do I actually believe about money, about success, about discipline? And the truth wasn't flattering. I believed money was scarce. I believed wealthy people were just lucky. I believed my background limited my future. Those philosophies weren't written on paper, but they were written on my life. So I sat down one evening with a notebook and rewrote everything. Not what I felt, but what I wanted to believe. I wrote that money is a tool, not an enemy. I wrote that discipline creates destiny. I wrote that the future will reward those who prepare for it. And I began replacing the old ideas with new ones. It didn't transform me overnight, but it changed the direction of every step I took afterward. And changing direction is all you need to change destination. Most people don't realize this. You're not stuck because of circumstances. You're stuck because of philosophies you haven't questioned. So much of poverty is inherited not through money, but through thinking. If you grew up hearing, play it safe, don't dream too big, money's hard to come by, you may not repeat those words, but you'll repeat the lifestyle they produce. And until you examine those beliefs one by one, like pulling weeds from a garden, they continue growing and choking out your future. I made it a ritual to study the thinking of wealthy people, not their bank accounts, not their cars, not their accomplishments, their thinking, how they approached problems, decisions, opportunities. It was like stepping into a larger room, and once you enter a larger room in your mind, it's very hard to go back to living in a smaller one. You begin to realize that the difference between you and the people you admire is not intelligence, not talent, not background, it's philosophy. And here's the beautiful part. Philosophy is a choice. You can rewrite it, you can rebuild it, you can elevate it, and when you do, life responds accordingly. Your results rise to the level of your thinking, and once your thinking rises, your life has no choice but to follow. I realized early on that you cannot attract what you do not understand. Most people want wealth, but they treat money like a stranger, something distant, mysterious, unpredictable. And anything that stays a mystery will always stay out of reach. The wealthy don't fear money because they've studied it. They've spent time with it. They understand its moods, its patterns, its behaviors. Money is not emotional, but people are, and that emotional distance keeps them broke. Once you remove the fear and replace it with familiarity, money becomes a tool you can guide instead of a force that controls you. I wasn't born with that understanding. I remember the days when financial terms sounded like a foreign language, when decisions around money felt like guessing games. I'd look at people who talked about investments, assets, percentages, returns, and I felt like they were reading from a book I didn't have access to. But the truth was, the book was available, I just hadn't opened it yet. And the first time I did, something interesting happened. The fear started to shrink. The unknown wasn't so unknown anymore. It became manageable, approachable, something I could grow into instead of hide from. Wealth is a subject. Just like math, history, or science, it has principles that anyone can learn. But most people never study it. They study entertainment. They study gossip. They study distractions. Then they wonder why money remains complicated. I remember deciding that every day I would learn at least one thing about wealth. Some days it was a concept like compounding. Other days it was understanding how wealthy people protect their time or how they diversify their income. It didn't matter what it was. The goal was to stop being a stranger to the very thing I claimed I wanted more of. And once I began understanding it, something profound happened. Money started behaving better. It wasn't running away from me anymore. It wasn't slipping through my fingers the moment I earned it. Because once you understand money, you naturally make better decisions. You manage it with clarity instead of emotion. You hold it with purpose instead of panic. And you begin to see patterns everywhere. Patterns of waste, patterns of opportunity, patterns of growth. I also learned the value of sitting down once a week and reviewing everything. Not to judge, not to criticize, but to understand. Where did the money go? Why did I spend it? What can I improve next week? That simple practice turned chaos into order. And wealth only grows where there is order. I started following people who were ahead of me, not to compare, but to learn. I listened to those who taught with integrity, those who had results built on principles, not luck. Before long, the subject of wealth became familiar, almost friendly, and the more familiar it became, the closer it moved toward me, because you cannot attract what you treat like a stranger. When you study wealth, you invite it into your life, and it comes. I learned long ago that if you want to change your financial life, you must first change your timeline. Most people think in days and weeks. A few think in months. Almost no one thinks in decades. Yet that is where real wealth is born, in the long shadows of patience, discipline, and a vision that stretches far beyond the temptations of today. The poor chase firewood, quick relief, instant heat, something to make them feel warm for the moment. The wealthy plant forests, decisions that may not pay off immediately but will provide shade, fruit, and shelter for years to come. And I had to train my mind to make that shift because it does not happen naturally. Human nature is wired for now, not later. I remember a time in my early years when every dollar burned a hole in my pocket. If I earned it today, I wanted to enjoy it today. And what I didn't realize was that I was building a life one impulse at a time. I wasn't planting anything. Nothing was compounding. Nothing was growing. Then one day, someone asked me, "Where will you be financially in 10 years?" It startled me because I realized I had no idea. I wasn't thinking past Friday, much less a decade. That simple question forced me to confront the gap between my dreams and my habits. And that's when I began training my mind to think long term. At first it felt uncomfortable, almost unnatural. But I sat down and wrote out a 10-year plan, not to predict every detail, but to give direction to my decisions. I asked myself who I wanted to become, what I wanted to own, what I wanted to earn, and what kind of life I wanted to live. Suddenly, the daily temptations didn't look so appealing. When you know where you want to be in 10 years, it becomes easier to say no in the moment. You start recognizing that every small choice is a seed. And the question becomes, am I planting weeds or trees? I also learned the value of reviewing those long-term goals every week. Not once a year, not when life gets tough, but weekly. Because the mind drifts, ambition fades, distractions grow louder. A weekly review pulls your future back into your present. It reminds you why you started, and it realigns your actions with your vision. I found that the more often I revisited my long-term plan, the more naturally my behavior adapted to match it. My spending changed, my saving changed, my priorities changed. Not through force, but through clarity. And one of the most powerful habits I adopted was delaying just one gratification each day. Not all of them, just one. One thing I wanted but didn't need. One urge I resisted. One temptation I exchanged for something better. Over time, that simple practice built discipline, and discipline built momentum. Eventually, the long-term mindset didn't feel forced anymore. It felt natural. Because when you train your mind to think in decades, your life begins to transform in ways that days and weeks could never achieve. Before you ever get your financial life in order, you must first get your mental life in order. I learned that painfully, because for a long time I tried to change my bank account without changing my thinking. I tried to force myself into better financial habits, but I hadn't yet built the inner strength required to maintain them. And it didn't take long to discover that if the mind is weak, every habit you try to build will eventually crumble. Money requires discipline, but discipline doesn't begin in the wallet. It begins in the mind. A scattered mind produces scattered finances. A focused mind produces focused results. I remember the time when I told myself I was going to save consistently. I made the plan, I set the intention, I even felt excited about the idea. But a few days later, life presented a small temptation, and that little voice whispered, "Just this once." And just this once became a habit. And the savings plan evaporated. Not because the idea was wrong, not because I lacked knowledge, but because I hadn't built the mental discipline to follow through. That experience taught me that wealth isn't built by motivation, it's built by consistency. But consistency is impossible without mental strength. So I started training my mind long before I tried training my finances. I committed to doing one difficult thing every single day. Sometimes it was waking up a little earlier. Sometimes it was completing a task I had been avoiding. Sometimes it was choosing discipline over comfort. And every time I chose the hard thing, even in the smallest way, I could feel the muscles of discipline growing a little stronger. It wasn't about perfection. It was about conditioning. Just like you strengthen a muscle by repeatedly challenging it, you strengthen your mind by repeatedly keeping promises to yourself. Finishing what I started became one of the greatest transformations. I realized that every time I left something incomplete, I was teaching my mind that quitting was acceptable. And every time I finished something, even something small, I was teaching my mind that discipline was my default. I began to understand that the habit of finishing builds the character required to handle wealth. Because money flows to those who can be trusted with responsibility, and responsibility is simply discipline multiplied over time. Then I added the habit of tracking my progress daily, not obsessively, but intentionally. I wanted to see whether my decisions matched my goals, or if I was drifting. That little system held me accountable to myself, and accountability is one of the greatest forms of mental strength. It forces honesty, it forces clarity, it forces growth. And when my mind became disciplined, everything else became easier. My savings, my investing, my planning, my decisions. Money responds to structure, and structure comes from discipline, and discipline comes from the mind. Strengthen your mind, and wealth begins to follow. Most people look at a setback and see a wall. They focus on the size of the obstacle, the weight of the problem, the difficulty of the situation. But the wealthy train their minds differently. They've learned that wherever you place your attention, your life begins to move. If you stare long enough at the obstacle, it grows larger. If you stare long enough at the opportunity, that grows larger. I learned early on that the mind will always give energy to whatever it studies. And if you study problems, your energy drains. If you study possibilities, your energy rises. So the real question is not whether life will bring you challenges, because it surely will. The real question is where you will direct your focus when those challenges arrive. I remember a season in my life when nothing seemed to work. Every idea I had seemed to fall apart. Every door felt closed. I kept asking myself, why is this happening to me? But one day I learned to ask a different question. What's the opportunity inside this? And the moment I asked a better question, my mind began giving me better answers. It's almost as if the brain is a powerful machine waiting for instructions. When you tell it that everything is a problem, it will prove you right. But when you tell it to search for opportunity, it will dig through the rubble to find something useful. From that day on, I made it a habit. Every setback had to give me at least one seed of value. Sometimes the opportunity was a lesson, sometimes a skill, sometimes a new direction, but there was always something. I even began keeping a journal, nothing fancy, just a few lines each day, recording the opportunities I discovered in ordinary events. And it didn't take long before I noticed something remarkable. The more I trained my mind to see opportunity, the more opportunities began to appear. Maybe they were always there, and I had simply been blind to them. That's the thing about focus. It doesn't create opportunity, it reveals it. It sharpens your vision so you begin noticing what others overlook. The world is filled with possibilities that most people never see because they're too busy staring at the obstacles. And I realized something else. Your environment plays a big role in this transformation. If you spend your time with people who only talk about problems, sooner or later you become fluent in the language of limitation. But if you surround yourself with individuals who see possibilities where others see barriers, you begin to think differently. Optimism becomes contagious. Opportunity thinking becomes normal. And the moment opportunity thinking becomes your default, your life begins moving upward almost automatically. Slowly, I began seeing that opportunities aren't rare. The rare thing is a mind trained to notice them. Once you discipline your focus, you stop feeling overwhelmed by obstacles because you're too busy searching for what they're trying to show you. And when you train your mind to spot opportunities daily, you step into a world where progress becomes inevitable. Focus on opportunities, and opportunities begin to focus on you. Most people live day to day, paycheck to paycheck, reacting to problems as they come, hoping that somehow their effort will be enough to survive. But the wealthy see the world differently. They don't focus on just getting through the day. They focus on building systems, repeatable engines that work for them even when they aren't actively at the controls. I learned early in my career that working harder and longer hours didn't make me rich. It just made me tired. What made the difference was building processes that could run independently, that multiplied effort without multiplying my stress. Systems, not survival, create lasting wealth. I remember starting in sales with very little. At first, I hustled, running from client to client, taking every call, writing every proposal myself. I thought that effort alone would bring results. And it did, to a point. But there was always a ceiling. I could only do so much in a day. One day, a mentor said to me, "Don't chase every sale. Build a system where the sales come to you." At first, I didn't understand. How could a system replace me? But slowly, I began documenting processes, how I approached clients, how I followed up, even how I handled objections. I turned my methods into repeatable steps that a junior associate could follow. And soon I realized my income wasn't limited by my personal energy anymore. It was multiplied by the system I had built. The key is to see your work as a series of processes rather than isolated tasks. Every time you solve a problem, you're creating knowledge that can become a system. Every repeatable action can be documented, refined, and delegated. This frees you to focus on growth, innovation, and higher value opportunities. The wealthy understand this principle intuitively. They don't just trade hours for dollars, they create structures that generate returns automatically. A business without systems depends entirely on the owner's energy. A business with systems can thrive even when the owner steps back, allowing wealth to compound like interest in a well-managed account. Start small. Don't try to systemize everything at once. Document one process a week. Automate where possible. Delegate what can be delegated. Over time, these small engines will connect, creating a network of systems that drive income, free time, and growth simultaneously. Your mindset shifts from survival, reacting to bills, deadlines, and problems, to design, innovation, and leverage. Once you see the world in systems, every action you take has the potential to generate multiple returns. Survival thinking keeps you trapped. Systems thinking sets you free. Build processes, multiply your effort, and watch as your life begins to operate like a well-tuned engine, producing wealth long after the effort was initially invested. Too many people wait for success to knock on the door before they start believing in it. They wait for the money to appear, the promotion to come, the business to take off, and only then do they feel worthy, capable, or ready. But the wealthy know that success begins in the mind long before it manifests in reality. They act as if the results are already theirs, planting seeds today with the unshakable belief that tomorrow will yield a harvest. I learned this early in my career, working for a company where I barely made enough to cover expenses. I remember sitting at my small desk imagining the life I wanted, the freedom to make my own decisions, the ability to invest in opportunities, the capacity to give generously. It felt almost impossible at the time, but I didn't let that stop me. I acted with expectancy, behaving in ways that were consistent with someone who was already on the path to abundance. Expectancy is more than just daydreaming. It's a discipline of preparation. When you visualize success, you activate your mind to notice opportunities others overlook. When you speak affirmations rooted in action, you reinforce the behaviors that will produce wealth. Expecting success isn't arrogance. It's a form of readiness. I remember preparing for a sales presentation where I had no guarantee of winning the client. Instead of worrying, I envisioned the client shaking my hand, signing the contract, and expressing gratitude for the value I would bring. That visualization fueled my confidence, my preparation, and my execution, and in that meeting, the client became my partner. The harvest was real because I had planted the seed in my mind first. This principle extends beyond business. Every wealthy person I've observed carries a sense of expectation. They dress, speak, and act in alignment with the outcomes they desire. You can develop this mindset by incorporating daily practices. Take 5 minutes each morning to visualize the wealthy version of yourself. Journal as if the results are already happening, and speak affirmations that reinforce purposeful action. The secret is simple. Act as if the results already exist, and your mind will guide your actions toward them. When challenges arise, the expectant mind sees solutions instead of barriers. When opportunities appear, it recognizes and seizes them. Expectancy transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results because it programs you to operate at a higher level than circumstance dictates. Believe in the harvest before you plant the seed, and watch how life responds to a mind prepared for success. Most people treat money as something to spend, to enjoy, or to worry about, but rarely do they treat it as a worker, a productive partner. Yet, the wealthy understand a simple truth: money is most powerful when it's working for you. I've always said that every dollar should have a job, just like every employee in a company contributes to the bottom line. If you leave money idle, it earns nothing, produces nothing, and grows nothing. But when you assign purpose to each dollar, it becomes an active participant in building your future. I remember the early days of my financial journey. I would earn my paycheck, pay the bills, and leave the rest sitting in my checking account. It felt safe, but looking back, it was idle capital. Then I learned to treat money differently. A portion for living, a portion for giving, a portion for reinvesting, and a portion for opportunity. That simple shift in mindset transformed my finances. Suddenly, every dollar I earned had a mission. My money wasn't just there to be counted, it was there to grow, multiply, and create more opportunities. To implement this, you need a plan, a dollar assignment system. Decide exactly where every portion of your income will go before it even hits your hands. Perhaps 50% goes to living expenses, 20-30% goes to assets that produce returns, 10% goes to personal development, and 10% goes to giving. The percentages can vary, but the principle is consistent. Money is a tool, not a trophy. Idle cash is wasted potential. Active cash becomes a seed that grows into wealth. Consider the compounding effect. Even small amounts assigned consistently to investments, stocks, real estate, or businesses multiply over time. A dollar invested today can return many dollars tomorrow, not because of magic, but because it has been given a job. I learned to evaluate every expense by asking, is this dollar working for me, or am I just spending it for comfort or pleasure? This approach created discipline, clarity, and purpose in every financial decision I made. The principle also builds confidence. When you know every dollar has a purpose, you no longer feel anxious about money. You become proactive rather than reactive, controlling your finances instead of letting them control you. Opportunities become visible because your money is ready to take action. It's not about being wealthy in appearance, it's about being wealthy in function. Money, when assigned correctly, will compound, grow, and create a life of freedom you never imagined. Treat every dollar like an employee, give it a clear job, and let it earn, produce, and work tirelessly for your future. When money works, you don't. Many people dream about wealth, imagining sudden windfalls or magical opportunities. But wealth rarely responds to wishes. It responds to structure, to the habits we practice day in and day out. The truth is that financial freedom isn't built from occasional bursts of effort or lucky breaks. It is built from predictable, consistent actions that compound over time. Wealth is the sum of small, intelligent choices repeated daily, weekly, and monthly. Early in my career, I witnessed countless people working hard but never getting ahead. They would make a little extra money here, a smart investment there, but without a system to reinforce their actions, those efforts dissipated. What separates the wealthy from the rest is not luck or extraordinary talent. It is predictable, disciplined habits. When I first began automating my savings and investments, I realized that the real power lay in consistency. I didn't have to remember every month to put money aside. The system did it for me, and my wealth grew quietly, steadily, and reliably. To adopt this mindset, start by automating your financial habits. Set up weekly or monthly transfers into savings accounts, investment vehicles, or retirement funds. Automating removes human error, emotion, and procrastination. Even small amounts, when invested consistently, begin to grow exponentially over time. The key is not the size of each contribution, but the predictability and reliability of the habit. Next, create a rhythm of review. Set aside a specific day every week to check your finances, track your progress, and adjust where necessary. This is not about micromanaging money. It's about maintaining awareness and reinforcing habits. By reviewing consistently, you build discipline and prevent small issues from becoming larger problems. Habits without review tend to drift. Structure without reflection becomes stale. Finally, focus on one habit at a time until it becomes effortless. Wealth building is a marathon, not a sprint. Attempting too many habits at once leads to burnout and failure. Start small. Perhaps automating a single investment, tracking expenses daily, or scheduling weekly financial reflection. Once the habit is ingrained, add another. Over time, These small, predictable habits compound just like your investments, creating a powerful momentum that propels your wealth forward without requiring extraordinary effort. I've seen people who diligently followed these predictable patterns over decades achieve financial independence, while others, equally talented, struggled because they lacked structure. The lesson is clear. Wealth is not a function of occasional effort. It is the product of disciplined, repeatable actions that compound reliably. Build predictable habits, automate where possible, review consistently, and you will watch your financial life transform quietly but powerfully. Wealth responds to structure, habit, consistency, and reflection more than it responds to wishful thinking. One income is too close to zero. I've always believed that relying on a single paycheck is like standing on one leg. It only takes a small shift, a change in circumstance, or a misstep to fall. Wealth is rarely built on a single source of income. It's built by creating multiple streams, each contributing to your financial stability and growth. The rich understand this principle early. The first step is to start early. I often tell people, you don't need to wait until you have hundreds of dollars to invest in income streams. You can begin with a side skill, a small freelance service, or even a digital project. Early action compounds just like money does. A small side income started today could blossom into a major revenue stream over years. I've seen young professionals begin with just a few hours a week on something they love, writing, consulting, teaching, and within a few years, these side projects grew into substantial, semi-passive income sources. The key is consistency and strategic reinvestment. Next, diversify wisely. Not all streams need to be fully passive from the start. Think in tiers. Active income, where you trade time for value. Semi-passive income, where effort up front produces long-term returns. And fully passive income, which works without daily input. By blending these, you not only increase cash flow, but also reduce risk. If one stream slows or dries up, others continue to support you. I remember a friend who invested in rental properties while maintaining a consulting business. The consulting kept him afloat during slow months in rentals, while the properties gradually built equity and cash flow. Each stream supported the other, creating financial resilience. Finally, reinvest your earnings into new streams. Many people fall into the trap of consuming every extra dollar. The wealthy understand that each additional income source is a seed for another. They feed one to grow multiple. Reinvest side profits into stocks, digital products, or additional skill development. Each reinvestment compounds not only your money, but also your knowledge and experience. I've watched people start with a small online course and gradually expand into multiple courses, mentorship programs, and even books, each new venture building on the last. The principle is clear. Don't rely on one income. Start early, diversify intentionally, and reinvest consistently. Multiple streams aren't just about more money. They're about security, growth, and freedom. The moment you adopt this mindset, you stop trading time for money alone and begin building a financial ecosystem that works for you. Wealth multiplies when it flows from multiple streams, each feeding the next, and the time to begin is now. Before you chase big wins, you must first build a financial fortress. Too often, I see people running after grand opportunities without the foundation to sustain them. And when unexpected challenges arrive, health emergencies, job loss, or market shifts, their dreams crumble because they lack security. Security doesn't stifle ambition, it strengthens it. The wealthy understand that fortune favors the prepared. They don't gamble recklessly, they protect what they already have, so that when opportunity knocks, they can answer with confidence, not fear. The first step in building your fortress is an emergency fund. Life is unpredictable, and setbacks are inevitable. Saving 6 to 12 months of essential expenses isn't just prudence, it's freedom. I remember my early days, struggling with inconsistent income, and how the small savings I had created a cushion that allowed me to make bold decisions without panic. That safety net gave me the courage to pursue opportunities others avoided, because I knew I could survive any short-term challenge. This cushion doesn't have to be massive at first. It only needs to exist and be accessible. Over time, it grows, compounding not only money, but also confidence. Next comes insurance. Protect your income, health, and key assets. Too many people neglect this step, thinking nothing will go wrong until it does. Insurance is more than a safety measure. It's a tool for leverage. It allows you to take calculated risks, invest with clarity, and pursue wealth-building ventures without the paralyzing fear of catastrophe. I've worked with clients and colleagues who, thanks to proper coverage, were able to seize opportunities during crises that would have otherwise destroyed them. Think of insurance as the walls and gates of your fortress. They shield you while your money works outside in the world. Finally, diversify your investments to lower volatility. Don't place all your capital in a single asset or market hoping for a jackpot. Spread your wealth across vehicles, stocks, real estate, bonds, or businesses to reduce exposure to a single failure. Diversification is not about being timid. It's about ensuring that one setback doesn't wipe out everything. I often encourage people to treat their portfolio like a well-guarded garden. A variety of plants, each serving a purpose, thriving even if one season brings challenges. The lesson is simple yet profound. Before you chase large gains, fortify yourself. Build your emergency fund, secure your life with insurance, and diversify your investments. This foundation doesn't limit your wealth, it amplifies it. A fortress of security gives you the freedom to think boldly, act decisively, and take the risks that truly matter. Strong foundations are the silent partner in every millionaire's success. Start building yours today. Knowledge alone is like water held in a cup. It has potential, but unless it flows, it doesn't nourish. The wealthy understand that information is only as valuable as its application. What you learn becomes power when it is transformed into income, influence, or opportunity. I have seen countless talented individuals sit on incredible knowledge, waiting for a perfect moment or for someone to notice them, only to realize years later that untapped expertise holds no power. Wealth is built not by accumulation of facts, but by turning knowledge into action that produces results. The first step is to identify your unique skills and insights. Everyone possesses something that others need. Experience in a field, mastery of a craft, or wisdom learned the hard way. I recall my own early days when I realized that much of what I knew about sales, leadership, and personal growth could be organized and taught to others. By simply applying what I already understood and sharing it, I transformed my knowledge into real income. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to package and present what you know in a way that others find valuable. Next, create a product, service, or teaching offer. This can take many forms: consulting, courses, books, workshops, or even digital content. The medium is less important than the value you provide. I've worked with people who started with simple ideas, a seminar in a small hall or a series of online tutorials, and grew it into a sustainable income stream. The key is taking the first step. Don't wait until it's perfect. Start small, deliver value consistently, and refine as you grow. Building a digital presence amplifies your reach. In today's world, your expertise can travel farther than ever before. Social media, websites, email newsletters, and online communities allow you to share insights with a global audience. I remember guiding a young entrepreneur who began by posting simple tips online. Within months, those posts generated consulting requests, speaking invitations, and collaborative opportunities. Your knowledge, when broadcast strategically, becomes a magnet for income and opportunity. Finally, package what you know into value others can buy. Think from the perspective of the receiver. What problem are you solving? What transformation can you deliver? Wealth is rarely created by selling information alone. It is created by solving problems and improving lives. By monetizing your knowledge thoughtfully, you are no longer exchanging hours for dollars. You are creating scalable income streams that work for you while you sleep. The lesson is clear. Stop hoarding knowledge and start deploying it. Turn what you know into value, what value into service, and what service into income. Knowledge without application is wasted potential. But knowledge applied wisely builds not only wealth, but influence, confidence, and freedom. Begin today. Take one piece of what you know and find a way to share it for value. The world is waiting, and your opportunity is now. As we reach the close of this conversation, remember this: wealth is not an accident, and success is never a lottery. It is the natural result of disciplined thinking, consistent action, and the courage to take control of your mind and your finances. Your mindset is the soil in which your fortune grows. If your mind is cluttered with fear, excuses, or scarcity, your bank account will reflect the same. But when you nurture your mind with possibility, responsibility, and a vision for the future, the seeds you plant today will flourish into prosperity tomorrow. I want you to see failure not as a wall, but as a mirror, reflecting where you can improve. Let discipline become your habit, learning your companion, and action your signature. The wealthy think differently, not because they are luckier, but because they train their minds to see opportunities, to add value, and to convert knowledge into results. Every day wasted in hesitation is a day your future self could have used to compound success.